Welcome back, everyone, to the Just Berry podcast. We got my friend here, Wulf Trigo. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate being here, and I'm super excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So we know each other from jiu-jitsu. I want to dive a little bit into your relationship with jiu-jitsu, but also more about your business and your upbringing and some things that you've been through in your personal life too.
Yeah, of course. So as far as jiu-jitsu goes, something I never thought I would do, but I am very, very happy I got the chance to do. It was recommended by an old friend of mine who we're not currently friends anymore, but the one thing that I will say that I'm very grateful for is to have at least brought that little, like that bug of jujitsu. Something I've always thought about doing, but I never thought I had the guts to do it until I actually just jump in to do it. And I can honestly say that it's one of the things that it pretty much saved my life. As in, the way that I see it is it gave me something to do that allowed me to not think about everything else that's going on in my life. And yeah, it's been a great way to not only just quote unquote escape or just have a better way to, I guess, cope, with the stuff that's happening, but it's also a very fun sport. It allows me to work on the problem solving skills too, because like once you're in a match, you can't think about everything else other than just making sure that you stay alive and that you get it done.
Do you think the skills that you are learning, you've developed in jiu-jitsu transfer and have helped you in your personal business?
Absolutely. I think jiu-jitsu is very much like business, because in businesses, once you start a business, it's like you're a white belt getting thrown into an open mat, you know. And when I say white belt, I don't mean like a sandbagger white belt, like somebody who's been a white belt for 2 years. I'm talking about like a brand spanking new white belt that just gets thrown into an open mat that, you can go against a black belt, brown belt, or whatever with people that have a lot more experience than you. So business is very much like that, because you don't know what you're doing at first. You don't know how good you're going to be, and you don't know if you're going to be able to make it, because a lot of the times people get discouraged by loss and then they justify it by like some injury that they know they can recover from, but then they say like, oh, my body's not what it used to be anymore, so I'm not going to pursue this career anymore. And they make the same type of excuses for business. They're like, oh, well, I got a family, I can't risk everything, so I got to go get a cozy, nice job. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. People's careers and people's paths have to be whatever they choose it to be, because it is their life, and I'm nobody to judge them. My path, unfortunately, in my opinion, I think it's fortunately, it's been 10 years of just constant grind and sucking at it to get to where I'm at. I don't think I'm a black belt in business, but I think I'm pretty much like a brown belt, or purple at least, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think it's very transferable, both things, business and jiu-jitsu. I think it's very similar.
And tell us a little bit more about your business, because you're the CEO of Sovereign Assets. So walk us through what that is, how you got started.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Sovereign Assets is basically my passion project, has been my baby for the longest time now. I've been in financial services for about a decade now. In May of this year is going to be my 10-year anniversary being in the business. And looking back 12 years ago when I first came to this country, I never thought I'd be in this position, let alone finances. That's the one thing that I didn't like math, I didn't like numbers, and I didn't think this is something that I would be doing. However, by stroke of luck or just by God's will, I ended up stumbling upon an opportunity to go sell regular life insurance door to door. And at the time, I was getting off of what's it called, pest control, solar, and windshield door-to-door sales, and I wanted to find something better. And at the time that I was just trying to figure out myself, once I got out of door-to-door pest control and windshield, I had like a little bit of a gap of about 5-6 months where I was a Spanish interpreter, where I was trying to figure out my next thing. And that's when I basically run into insurance sales. And again, that's 10 years ago that I did this. So people that are doing insurance sales right now, a completely different ball game. So back in the day, it was not sexy, it was not attractive, nobody really liked to do insurance. Now everybody sells insurance, to be honest. Everybody online is pitching you. You got the TikToks, you got the Instagrams that are talking about insurance. But at the first company, I wanted to do a little bit more, and I wanted to be more tailored. I wanted my approach to be a lot more tailored. So about 7 years ago, that's when I decided to actually start Sovereign Assets, because I had already a couple of years in my belt under my belt. I knew the industry was good. I knew it was an industry in high demand because obviously as long as people are dying, life insurance is going to be a good industry to be in. Mm-hmm. However, the approach had to be different because people didn't like life insurance agents because they see them as like scummy, basically same type of car salespeople. Car salespeople and life insurance salespeople are basically bucketed into the same bucket. I didn't want to be that. I didn't want my clients to feel like they're just another paycheck to me. So over the past 7-8 years, I've been focused specifically on building my brand of Sovereign Assets. And I wanted to make sure that no matter what, my integrity was the one thing I would never trade off. So as opposed to most people's experience with life insurance agent is that, oh, they sold me an overpriced policy, they made a lot of commission, and then I lost a lot of money. The conversation with my clients is a little bit different because now my clients understand that I'm cutting my commissions down by like 70 to 90%. So that way their dollar goes even further. That's why our retention rate, I looked at the numbers for like this past year, our retention rate is 93.4%, which in life insurance is extremely unheard of. Most businesses that have been in business for as long as I have, their retention rate is usually about 60%. So we're already outpacing everybody else by like 30%. So, and the reason why that is not because I'm better. It's just simply because our approach is different. We want to take care of the client in a way that if we were to have a conversation with this client in 2 years, would the client be happy with us or would they be upset with us? And the reason why that was it is because my mom was one of my first clients. And I was like, at that point, I had an opportunity to either do it the wrong way and sell an overpriced policy to just make a paycheck, or I had the opportunity to make sure, like, no, I'm going to make sure my mom is set up for the future. I wanted to make sure that any of the financial instruments that I set her up, whether it's an annuity, an IUL, or a final expense policy, whatever it is, I wanted to make sure that it was done the right way. And that's why, 4 years later, my mom needed to have access to some of the cash value of her policy, and she was able to do that. And the only reason why she was able to do that is because I structured the policies correctly. You hear a lot of nightmare stories about people not being able to access the cash that they put into their life insurance policy. So in other words, like, long story short, the reason why Sovereign Assets is my passion project is because I treat every single one of my clients just like any of my family members would be. So I think that's what attributes to our success. And at the end of the day, I just didn't want to be the life insurance guy anymore. I wanted to be looked at as like an advisor.
Right. I know you guys have had a lot of success, and I heard about infinite banking the first time from you guys, actually. Mm-hmm. You and your partner, Mitch, who also has done jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, Mitch is awesome. I miss that guy. Yeah. He's in Seattle right now.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about infinite banking so people can understand what that is.
Absolutely. So infinite banking is it's a very specialized tool. So most people have the wrong idea because they see the videos on Instagram and they think the infinite banking is kind of like the silver bullet that replaces everything, right? Most people, they think, oh, if I get an infinite banking policy, I don't need an IRA anymore. I don't need stocks. I don't need real estate. I don't need anything else because that's what the guy on Instagram told me, or that's the guy on TikTok told me. That's completely wrong. Infinite banking is just a tool that the wealthy individuals of America have used for many generations simply as a banking or leverage tool. So in other words, it's a vehicle where you can store cash, like a cash warehouse, to where you can borrow from yourself and getting paid for it, where you can use that same cash that you pulled out to go invest into another cash flowing asset. So in other words, we use a permanent cash value life insurance policy that's specifically structured for cash accumulation. And the reason why we want to make sure that the cash accumulation is there is so people can put as much money as they want, so they can pull out a decent amount of money to go reinvest into other assets. To give you an example, I did it myself this past year, and we just bought a couple of businesses that essentially are going to be using the cash that I pulled out of my own policy. And I have a couple other investors as well too that they used their own policy by front loading it. They put $100, $200 million into the policy up front, and they immediately have access to 50 to 60%, sometimes even higher, to pull it out to go invest it somewhere else. And the reason why they want to do that is because inside of the policy, we're targeting moderate returns between like 8 to 12%, somewhere along those lines. And then with those returns, when they borrow the money, it's going to cost them 5%, which essentially means that because they're making 8% and it's only costing them 5%, they're making a profit of 3% on the money that they borrow. So now they can go invest into real estate. They can go buy a YouTube channel that's already cash flowing. They can go buy crypto if they want to. They can go buy a business. They can invest into the other stuff that makes them the money. So that's what infinite banking is in a nutshell. Is just the ability of using the same dollar twice by making profits on the same dollar.
Okay. Where would you suggest somebody start if they're just like getting into all this? If, maybe they actually find themselves in a lot of debt right now, but they want to, get to a better place. Where do they start?
Yeah, when it comes to that question, you can take it two ways. I honestly think like out of control debt is horrible, and I think you should tackle that first. I kind of did it a little bit more of like the scorched earth approach because I hired a company to basically do settlement, like a debt settlement for me. It tanked my credit, but they were able to basically renegotiate my debt down by a third. So I was able to pay less than what I owed. And, again, it took me about 5 years to be able to restore my credit just because I invested it into wrong companies and stuff. And finally, I got one of my clients who owns a credit repair company that has been able to help me restore my credit. And officially, as of yesterday, my credit is completely clean, finally restored. But if I were in somebody else's position that has debt, that they don't know where to start, that they want to just figure out how to be able to get in a better position, I think what I would start with is to find a way to make more money. And I know it sounds corny, I know it sounds cliche. It's like, oh well, no shit, like I wonder how am I gonna do that, right? But what worked for me while I was building my business is I was getting like sales jobs. Like for example, I worked at Yelp while I was building my business, selling advertising. Their salary at the time was, I think it was like 45,000 plus commission. And I was one of the top salespeople over there too, So what I did is I saved my commission money so that way I could go full time and I could quit my job. And that's it. And I paid off my debts early. That debt settlement company, I paid it off early. So that way I didn't want to have a payment. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to be able to make sure that whatever I make, I invest it.
Right.
The problem that's happening right now is that as soon as people get a little bit of money, they go get a new car or they go get a new house. And now they have a payment, which is nothing wrong. If people want to chase the lifestyle, that's fine. That's their prerogative. In my opinion, yes, it took me 10 years to get to this point, but it's because I made those mistakes. As soon as I got a little bit of money in the first company, I went and bought a new car. I went and bought $1,000 suit. I went and bought $500 shoes. I went and bought a $3,000 bracelet. So it's like I blew it all. It took me like, a couple months to be able to get to that point where I was making that money. And then I blew it all off in one day. So the idea here is, number one, to go make more money. If you can, get a sales job that pays better and you have the opportunity to make commission just so you can build your nest egg and figure out what you want to do in your career. Then number two would be to get rid of liabilities. Again, a new car that's costing you $800 a month, $500 a month, or whatever the case may be, that's a liability. Get rid of that. I went through a friend of mine that owns a dealership, bought a car through the auction, fixed it up, cost me a couple $1,000s, and now I have a fully paid off car that I don't have any payments on it. And it works perfectly fine. It's a great car, and it's a nice one too. After that, once you have no liabilities, the idea here is to be self-disciplined and not waste that money. So the reason why I say that is because I learned from all these books, like What Would the Rockefellers Do? That book is one of the best books that I can recommend. Is the book that introduced me to infinite banking and how the trust structures work. And that's why I had a goal in mind. I was like, I'm not going to stop working until I'm able to put X amount of dollars into my own policy. Because I never want to be in a position where I have to go look for a loan from a bank to do it. I never want to be in a position where I have to be broke. So again, my mentality is a little bit different than most people. Like there's a lot of people on Instagram that say, oh, get the supercar because it's going to get you into rooms that you can't. I don't believe that. I think if you have to flash to be able to get into a room, those are the people that you don't want to work with anyways. So, because again, I've never had any issues getting high net worth individuals, and I do not drive a supercar. I do not dress in designer. I do not have a Rolex. I don't have any expensive stuff like that impresses people, because real wealth is silent, in my opinion. So yeah. So that's my advice. My advice is for people that are in a position where they have debt and they're trying to figure out what to do. Get a better job that pays you more. Get rid of the debt and the liabilities. Read books regarding finance. And 100%, I think everybody that's listening that has somewhat of a disposable income between a few $100 a month, I think one of the number one things that I did that set me up ahead was to put money into a properly structured policy. And that's the most important thing, is that it has to be properly structured. Otherwise, the money that you're putting into the policy is going towards the agent's commission. So I think that's it. And then at the end of the day, after a couple of years of putting money into the policy, again, if you have the discipline to wait, then you'll be able to have some play money. And now you use that play money to go buy a business or go buy another cash flowing asset that's going to pay you forever. And then you can do whatever you want. at that point. That's when you start your journey to financial independence. And again, this is not coming from me. This is coming from a lot of mentors and people that I look up to that have done it in the past. And I'm currently in the process of completing that myself.
Awesome. Thank you. That's super helpful. It takes a lot of drive and commitment and discipline to build a business and to get where you are right now. Where do you think that drive comes from for you personally?
For me personally, I hope this doesn't rub people the wrong way. I think me being an immigrant and also the son of a single mom, I think that had a lot to do with it. And I don't say this because I despise people that have parents. So I think having parents is such a privilege, and I am so happy for people that have both parents. I think it is such a beautiful thing to be able to grow up in a household that you have both parents, and I applaud everybody that has that, and I urge everybody to not take that for granted. When I came here to this country, it was basically my mom, my brother, and I, and we had no backbone, I guess. My dad and my mom divorced, and we kind of came here with like basically nothing, about 350 euros that my dad gave me.
How old were you?
16.
16.
Yeah. And, it's one of those days that, my dad basically told me, hey, don't spend it all at the mall. So he gave me 350 euros for an entire summer here in the US. So I had to figure it out at a very young age that, like, I don't have a father that's going to come and save me and rescue me. I had amazing family here in the US, like my Aunt Nasi and my Uncle Scott, that they took us in for the first 5 years. Without them, we wouldn't be where we're at right now. And we got extremely, extremely lucky that we had family behind us. And I think I got what a lot of immigrants do, which is kind of like survivor's guilt. It's like we look at people in our home countries and we know that not everybody had the same opportunity as us. And when we do get it, we just don't want to waste it because we get that survivor's guilt. And anybody that's an immigrant will understand this. Like anybody that's like first generation immigrant, they were raised in a different country and they moved here like whatever long ago. They get that. And matter of fact, on my naturalization speech that I gave when I became a citizen 4 years ago, that was one of the comments that I made. It's like the United States, flawed as it may be, right? But the United States gave me an opportunity that most people overseas dream of, that most people won't get. It's like I realized very soon that I can't mess this up. I cannot squander this opportunity. I cannot let it slip away from my hands. And on top of that too, aside from that, seeing my mom and the way that she was, even to this day, it still hurts me that she has to have a job, that she still worked for 10 years and like 12 years. And like, that's something that I just never I never wanted to live a life where that was my reality. You know what I'm saying? So that's why like my discipline and my drive and my determination became from the fact that I'm an immigrant and from the fact that I am a family man and I love my family so much that I was okay with sacrificing my life, my youth, my happiness, whatever people want to call it. I was okay with that because I wanted to make sure that my family was good. That's why like I say this sometimes too, that I took a couple years of just partying and just kind of like messing around and screwing up. And, I truly believe that if I didn't do that, I would be much, much more ahead today. Yeah, my drive and discipline comes from that, from my family, because they're my backbone. Without them, I wouldn't be here.
Thanks for sharing that. I definitely relate with the like seeing your mom work and everything. When I was growing up, I grew up with a single mom too, and just like all through school, I think she worked at a job where she would wake up, I don't know, like 2, 3 a.m., go to work, and then come home, get us to school, go back to work. I think that gives you a different perspective on life while you're growing up, and you look around, you're like, I don't really have an option other than to work hard for what I want. I mean, you can do that, or you can just sit there and waste away and be homeless and, let life work against you. But there's a blessing in that where it gives you that sense of discipline and hard work, and you can see that your actions don't just affect you, but the people around you too, right? Because your mom was probably getting after it too, and you could see how 100%. That affected you.
My mom, the one thing I'll say is like my mom is probably one of the hardest working people I know. I can't remember the last time she actually took a day for herself or just wanted to be selfish and kind of just like do nothing. She's always been the person to get like 2, 3 jobs if she needed to. So I'm very lucky to be in the position that I am right now, that I'm able to help and provide for my family on that. But no, I totally get what you're saying. At the end of the day, it's very interesting when people say that, it's like, oh, choose your heart, right? It's hard to be broke. It's hard to be rich. Like, choose your heart. Like, that's real. That's like super real. People don't get it because, okay, people don't get this, okay? It is extremely hard to be rich on the short term. What I mean by that is like, it might take 2, 5, maybe 10 years to get rich if you grind your ass off. And a lot of people don't want to do that, okay? And they don't realize that the hard that they're not experiencing by just coasting through life and just kind of living a mediocre life comes later when people don't have the right insurance to take care of the medical bills. When people have lost the sense of purpose because they're stuck in a loop of just constant work 40 hours a week just to be able to make rent, so they can't travel, they can't go out to eat, they buy stuff from the dollar store, which again we all know that the ingredients are absolutely horrible, so which means that they're gonna live shorter lives anyways. So it's that frog death. They say it's like you boil a living frog by slowly turning the temperature. The frog won't feel it, but it will die.
Right.
And the thing is like sometimes you have to get in that hot water like immediately so that way you understand that this is not the place that you want to be in. So that's why for me, I chose 10 years of hardship to get to where I'm at today, which again, could I have partied a little bit more? Could I have gone on one more trip? Could I have splurged maybe a little bit more, or maybe got a better car, whatever? All that stuff is valid. But in my opinion, it was a sacrifice that I was willing to make because I wanted my life in the future to look different. I'm 28 now, and like I said, I have an entire life ahead of me that's going to look completely different because I sacrificed the past 10 years, the past decade of actually doing what I needed to do. So that's why I think people just don't understand what the opportunity cost is. And I never understood Gary Vee when he said that. Gary Vee said that like years ago, It's like, I wish people could take just a pill just so they can see it. And I never really understand it until like now. It's like, man, that guy was actually right. Like he may be a little cuckoo. He may be a little like, crazy or just aggressive, but he was right. He just, I don't know. I guess he was just ahead of his time.
There's a saying that I like. One of my phrases that helps ground me when I'm in a hard workout or something like that. It's, today I will do what others won't, so tomorrow I can do what others can't.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have to make that choice to show up 100%, to do the hard shit, because you're going to be surrounded by people who can't do something one day. And if you aren't prepared, you're not going to be able to do it either.
That's absolutely right. I think that right there is one of the things that most people just don't really think about. I thought about that for the longest time, and sometimes I kind of get into that rut. It's like, man, maybe I'm not meant for that kind of life, But it's like, no, screw that. I am going to get that life. Because at the end of the day, we are creators of our own destiny. And I know it sounds like that crazy, like The Secret type of stuff. Oh, you manifest what you want. But it's like, I don't really believe in manifestation that way. But I truly believe that if you have something in mind and your actions are mapping out to that, I think you're going to fall somewhere close to that. It's not really luck. It's just, you just seized the opportunity and then you just didn't give up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. There's a good balance between showing up and doing what you can, focusing on what's in your control, and then leaving the rest to God or the manifesting, like letting the universe bring whatever's meant for you to you. But it's not going to bring it to you unless you're putting in the work.
That's exactly right.
What's something that you wish people knew about you?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, I guess I watch anime. I'm a anime weeb, I guess they call it, right? That's the one thing that I guess most people don't know about. Maybe they do. I don't know. I think I'm a pretty open book. That's one thing that, everybody tells me, my girlfriend included. She tells me that I'm a PR nightmare because I just post everything that I feel like on Instagram. But yeah, no, I'm a geek. Like, I love anime. I love video games. There's nothing better than after a long day of work, after you've gone to the gym, you've crushed your appointments, and you did all the work that needed to be done. You get home and put either a good anime or just get a couple hours of The Witcher 3. That's the game I'm playing right now. Yeah. But yeah, no, absolutely. I'm a kid at heart. At the end of the day, I might portray this like angry, rough guy or whatever, but I'm a kid.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I'm just a kid.
Well, I think that's what draws a lot of people to you, is because you do have that good relationship with your inner child. I feel like you're not afraid to just go out and play and have fun, but you still take the necessary steps to be able to show up to protect others or do what needs to be done.
Yeah, I try my best. I think it's kind of weird because a lot of men have been feeling this way too. but it's so hard for them to express it. We have a society that kind of suppresses men's inner child, and they call them to be just that the tough guy that doesn't show any emotions, and at the end of on the same conversation will chastise them and ostracize them for not sharing their emotions. And the moment that they share their emotions, now they're being too emotional and too feminine. So it's kind of like one of those weird things that's like me when I'm by myself. That inner child is out there. I have a picture on my phone. I'll show you later. When I was like 5, 7 years old. And it's so funny because that just embodies who I am still to this day. Just a goofball that I never lost. I personally don't think I ever lost the want to have fun and to be goofy and to play around. I think it's just the reason why I don't show it that often is because it's been so suppressed that the moment I show it, it's like, oh, you're being weird, or you're being too much, you're too loud, you're this, you're cringy, you're awkward. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'll just shut up. I just won't talk anymore. I won't make these jokes anymore. I'll try to suppress them and just not talk about it. And that's why publicly I'm not as weird as I usually am, even though I'm still a little weird, but
yeah. What advice would you give somebody who is finding themselves in situations where they're being shut down?
Yeah, it's such a tough question because part of me obviously wants to say like, oh, screw them, just do you. But it's like, I'm not even doing that myself, I would be a hypocrite to stand here and say, oh, you just got to be yourself. Don't give up. Show them who you are. And if they don't like you, just walk away. But it's like, I don't even do that myself. I kind of have to cater to everybody's moods and needs and environments and stuff. And it's one of those things that it annoys me because like I want to be who I am. And if people can't handle that, then I don't want to be with them. But at the end of the day, it's like I have again, I'm just like a kid. So it's like the type of the type of kid that you meet somebody at the park and then you start playing with them and now you're best friends. So you get sad if that person just doesn't want to be friends with you anymore. I think I still have that part of my trauma within me that is like I get attached to people so quick because I just want to be friends with everybody. Not everybody's going to have the same type of courtesy. Not everybody's going to have the same type of attitude. So for people that just are dealing with that kind of stuff, like unfortunately, you almost have to learn how to stand up for yourself. And that's something that I'm learning myself too. It sounds weird to say, but I've even hired coaches to help me kind of navigate some of my emotions that way. And like I said, it's a long road. It's a long journey that I think men as a whole, or even just women too. I just can't speak for women because I just don't know what they go through. But I think for men specifically, the right answer is to have moderation and read the room. But at the end of the day, never bargain who you are for anybody else. Like, for example, if you're at a high-class gala, you're not going to be showing up with shorts and a t-shirt and try to start goofing around and being rude to everybody, right? But if I'm going to show up in a suit, to a gala, I'm still going to be me. I'm still going to make jokes. When I laugh, I have a very loud laugh, which sometimes it is a little embarrassing, but I'm not going to trade that because that's who I am. And I understand that people don't want to be around that because they just want to be quiet or they just don't like attention. Fine. I don't mind attention because that's how a child works, and not to say that men should be childish because at the end of the day, I am still mature enough to get shit done. But I think there's a certain level of playfulness and fun that men need to be able to maintain to kind of like regulate their emotions. Because if you see things like you're a kid, if somebody says something to you, it might hurt you at the moment, but you're like, oh, whatever, doesn't matter. I'm focused on the other thing, because it's like a kid might cry for a second, and then next thing you know, they're just building a sandcastle or just playing with their toys and stuff. So I think there's a lot that we can learn from kids and children at that level, that it's like not to be a childish person, but to have that dismissiveness of almost like unoffendable. A kid, again, might cry for 2 seconds, and then next thing you know, they're still playing again, and they're doing their own thing. I think just being unoffendable is the one thing that you can take from that. But at the end of the day, it's like, don't let people suppress who you are. But at the same time, it's okay to kind of act. Like in certain situations, if you're supposed to keep the peace or to just try to maintain certain facade, like I think sometimes it's okay to act, But it's a hard line because if you act too much, you get lost into that character. Kind of like how Christian Bale, he was asked, is like, I forgot what the question was. It was something about his characters. It's like, hey, how long did it take you to get out of that character? And then he says, do they ever leave? Right. Mm-hmm. So basically hinting to the fact that his characters like American Psycho and all these other characters that he played, they're still in there. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what a method actor is. It's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? It's like you're a great actor because you can portray a different persona, but sometimes you get lost into that persona. So there's not really an easy answer for that.
There's a book by Joe Polish called What's in It for Them. Really good book on connecting and marketing and stuff. But part of it, he talks about being true to who you are, and where if you're wearing a suit, it's like you got to remember you own the suit doesn't own you. And so I think just whatever situation you're stepping into, you got to bring yourself to that situation. And to be able to do that, you also have to make sure you're identifying with the correct parts of who you are. I think some people can get lost in the like negative self-beliefs or limitations, and they think that's what their identity is. And that's going to influence how you show up.
Honestly, that was part of my identity for the longest time. I think that's the one thing that I will give it to people when they watch some of my posts and they're a little depressing and stuff. I think part of me, when I post stuff like that it's a little depressing or talking about mental health or suicide and all that, I don't post it to lead my, I guess, like somberness. The reason why I started posting it in the beginning and making content regarding to that is because I lost so many people to suicide. I was a failed attempt myself. In 2017, I attempted to take my life, and I failed at it, thank God. And I think that part of me, it's like that part of a person will never die. It's like with addicts. The number one thing they tell you when you start a 12-step program is that, or at least in my experience, when you start a 12-step program, is that you never want to say that you're not an addict anymore. Because once you say you are not an addict anymore, you're speaking out of ego and thinking that you can never get tempted back into addiction again. So what we always say is an addict in recovery, And I think that's, in my opinion, I think that's a very healthy statement, because you're an addict in recovery that's sober, right? However, you're still giving that addiction the respect that it deserves to not get cocky and try to play with it. Right. Like, for example, if you're an addict and an alcoholic in recovery, you're not going to be around people that drink all the time. You're not going to try to just like, oh, maybe I'm going to start with a mocktail, and then maybe I start with just a beer, but it's just one beer. Because at that point, it leads to that temptation, right? But all that to say is that a lot of the content that I've been posting has been very geared towards men's mental health. And part of me just understands why some people say, hey, like, are you okay? I think you post a lot of negative stuff, and maybe it's feeding your that persona. And part of it, they're correct. But I think there's a certain truth behind it that men do have to suffer. And I'm not trying to be sexist here, but they have to suffer more than women have, or they have to suffer more than women should. And the reason why I say that is because a good man is someone who is okay with putting his family, his wife, kids, mom, above himself in order to provide for that family. And a man is, like I said, if there's a fire in a building, the man should be okay with sacrificing his life to save the people inside that building. Again, the same goes for like a working father. A working father should be okay with sacrificing his happiness, his dreams, in order to provide for that family. So to me, a lot of men suffer in silence because, first of all, they don't talk about it. Second of all, when they do talk about it, they get chastised for it. They get shamed for it. And it's like, oh, you complain too much. It's like, okay, yes, but like, you asked for this. You tell men to open up more and be more emotionally available. And when they talk about the stuff that's going on in their lives, they get shamed for it. So for me, stuff that I post about it is more of like, hey, it is what it is. Life sucks in a way, but there's a certain beauty and there's a certain pleasure that men get out of just conquering certain battles or just being in constant turmoil, I guess. And I know it's an unpopular opinion, but for example, the way that I kind of like to exemplify it, I think it was in World War II. There was a lot of victims that they were catatonic or something like that in France, I think it was. And like there was a lot of men that because of the war, they were catatonic, schizophrenic or something like that. Because they couldn't fight anymore, and they had no purpose. So they kind of just fell into that catatonic state. And again, I might get this wrong. I don't know where it was. I think it was maybe England or France or something like that. And the moment that they needed volunteers to drive the fire engines and just like medics and all that kind of stuff to help the city, these men that were in these hospitals in a catatonic state, it's almost like they found purpose again. And they were the ones driving those fire trucks and helping the people because they got a sense of purpose. Dangerous purpose because they could get bombed at any point in time, but it was purpose nonetheless. And I think that's the reason why men are being so feminized. And the reason why men are not men anymore, I think nowadays, is because they've lost a sense of purpose. They got too comfortable, and they're allowing women to kind of step into those boss babe roles. And I hear it when women are complaining about these men, and I get it. You know, it's not okay for women to take that masculine step. But at the end of the day, I think if a man wants to suffer and if a man wants to go through hardship, just let him do it. You know, because maybe that's how he gets purpose behind it.
Instead of like, trying to control.
Yeah, it's like exactly like, listen, like, you're gonna get peace, but it's because I'm gonna go to war, because I want to go to war. Like, there's one thing that I can almost guarantee for any man watching this is, for the most part, there's a certain masculine urge to kind of like pick up a sword and go fight demons and monsters and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of men, they feel that way. It's like, that's why there's the meme that is like the masculine urge to slowly bleed out in a snowy field. You know, it's funny. It's like a meme, right? But part of it is kind of true. It's like that honor, that masculine honor that comes out. And it's like, after I gave it my all, I died for something. In the movie Blade Runner, and I'm sorry, I'm like rambling at this point. I apologize.
It's good stuff.
In the movie Blade Runner 2049, I don't want to spoil it, but one of the characters in the movie tells another character in the movie that the most human thing we can do is to die for something that we believe in. And that right there is being almost my identity. I don't want to die, obviously. Like, I'm not chasing a death wish. Yeah. But if I die for something I believe in, I would be very happy. I would be accomplished. Because, for example, if I die protecting my family, or if I die for my beliefs, like, I'm a Christian, right? And if somebody puts a gun in my head, say, rebuke Christ or die, pull the trigger. Mm-hmm. Because I'm never going to deny my faith. You know, that's something I believe in. If I have to die for my faith, I'll do it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's what a lot of men want. They want something that they can believe in and they can stand and die on that hill for. And the men that don't feel that way, check their testosterone levels. You'll notice they're a lot closer to the 200s rather than the 700s. And anyways, that's my rant.
Yeah, I love that. I think a good takeaway from that too is, like, regardless of if you're a man or a woman, I think having an intention behind what you're doing, making sure it's connected to something bigger than yourself, that's where you're going to feel fulfilled. You're never going to feel fulfilled if all you do is wake up and go to work and come home and eat food and watch TV and you freaking make no improvements in your day-to-day life. So whoever you are, you need to make that intentional
Exactly.
choice.
It's not just limited to men. I'm just speaking for men because this is my experience, but right. I think women can take a lot out of it too. And again, I feel for them because a lot of these men have been like, they're betas now, and they want that princess treatment from women, you know, like going 50-50. And I might get flamed for this, but I honestly don't think like the 50-50 thing is the way to go. I think a man has to be a provider, and the women has to give the men the space to become a provider, because that's the issue. A lot of the times the women don't give the men the space, you know, but then again, you know, it's whatever it's purposeful for women, which some women, they want to have a family, they want to be a mom, they want to stay at home wife, and they want to be able to make a house a home. They want to be able to bring that warm environment to the house. Like, maybe that's their purpose, and they should be able to step fully into that, which is why a lot of men, they have to do the things that they have to do to be able to step in, to let them step into that role.
Right, 100%. You mentioned your faith, and just want to wind down here and touch on how your faith has impacted you, especially through your moments of adversity.
Oh my God, what a great question. No, I love this question because without God, without Christ, I wouldn't be anything. And he used to be the guy who was an atheist, who hated God, who hated religion. And you know, we could literally talk for hours about this. But to give you a very concise answer on how I've dealt with adversity, especially with my faith, how I've included my faith when I dealt with adversity, is I always keep thinking, first of all, I keep thinking of the Passion of the Christ, the movie. Mm-hmm. Most scholars say that the movie was a cute depiction of what actually happened. And if you watch that, I couldn't not stop sobbing when I was watching that. Almost the entire movie. I was just crying compulsively. I just couldn't stop just because what was going on. And just to hear that it was cute, that it's not actually how it happened, that what happened was actually even worse than that, you know? So for me, every time I'm going through adversity, number one, I think about his sacrifice, about Christ's sacrifice, because I believe it, and I've internalized it, and I've, in a sense, it's weird to explain to people who have no faith, but in a sense, I've experienced it almost like a third person looking at it. And that happened to me this past year before I got baptized. During the 40 days of Lent, and I know it's a Catholic thing, but during the 40 days of Lent, starting Ash Wednesday, I downloaded this app called Hallow. This is not a sponsorship, but I downloaded this app that basically had guided prayers and guided meditations, and they did like 46 days in a row leading up to his crucifixion, to his resurrection, and like the days after that. So I basically almost visualized all of it happened. It has solidified it even more for me. And so that's number one. Number two is I always think about that poem of the footprints in the sand. I've heard of it, like most people have heard about it. Most people have seen it on TikTok and stuff, but it's like, that is so powerful. Excuse me. That how arrogant are we to question God? Like, why weren't you there in my lowest moment when actually he was carrying us in our lowest moments? That's why there's only one set of footprints on the sand. I always think about that. And then I also reflect about any bad times that I've had in my life prior to the ones that I'm going through. And I say, did God ever let me completely suffer and just kind of like leave me alone? Did he let me fail? I don't know how to explain it, because like some people consider failure or like God leaving you just by letting you go through stuff. But at the end of the day, I never went hungry. I never got killed. I never lost my home. I never, like, you know what I'm saying? All the stuff that I went through, God was still with me and he still rescued me out of it. So I just think about that. I think about those three things. And, you know, my faith has been the strongest it's ever been.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
You mentioned the like footprints in the sand and how sometimes when we're going through that adversity, we feel like we're alone, like God has abandoned us and everything. And sometimes it takes years for us to realize that he was with us the whole time. I'm pretty open about the adversity that I went through when I was younger. I was molested by my dad for almost 10 years. And one of the times I was out on a sailboat in the Salt Lake. And that was the time where I was afraid for my life. Thought I was going to die if he knew I was awake during that whole incident. And throughout my teenage and adult years, I have always felt closest to God when I'm next to water. And there is a time last year when I was thinking about some of the stuff I went through when I was younger, and I realized in my darkest hour when I was in that boat, I was literally surrounded by water. And whenever I think about that, I'm like, you know what? Like, God always has a plan, and he doesn't send people to hurt us so that we can be strong and inspire other people. He allows us to have those experiences that we're capable of overcoming and getting through, and he's going to be there with us. And sometimes it takes years to realize that he's been there the whole time.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That must have been hard.
Yeah. Yeah. But one thing I do want to say is that whenever I share those experiences with people, and some people don't know exactly what to say, and a lot of times people will say, like, I'm sorry you went through that. And I think for me, like, I'm not sorry I went through that.
Yeah.
But I recognize where they're coming from, like they want to empathize with you or let you know that they care about you. So I do like what you said, like you want to thank somebody for sharing.
Yeah.
So just a little plug out there. When people share their hard experiences, they went through those things for a reason, and some of their biggest lessons in life are going to come through those difficult experiences. So don't be sorry.
Correct, exactly, because then they wouldn't be the person that they're in, you know. And you know, sometimes it's difficult what to say. Like you said, it's very difficult. One thing I learned it from, you know, when I was going to anonymous meetings. After anybody shares, they always say thank you for sharing. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's all they say, you know, and it makes you feel very listened.
Yes.
Because they're not trying to pity you. They're not trying to empathize. They're receiving it. They're just accepting it.
Right.
And something that I also learned from the suicide hotline, watching people that were volunteers and stuff like that. And one of the things that they do say, instead of saying, I'm sorry you're going through that, sorry you feel this way, I think it's more of like understanding that what they're going through is very hard. That's why I always, when somebody goes through something that's hard, I always say, like, that must have been very, very hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like a reinforcement of how they feel without having to say, oh, I'm sorry. Because, like, what are you sorry for? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Not like you did anything.
Yeah.
So I think that sometimes, even when I hear that too, it's like, hey, like, that sounds like it was rough. Like, it was very hard. It's almost like validates how I feel. Like, I get a certain piece of peace behind it. It's like, wow, maybe I'm not unreasonable for thinking this way. So that's something that I guess people can probably take away from that, is how to talk to people that have been victims. Is, instead of just being sorry for them, I think it's more of just understanding where they're coming from and just almost like validating.
And let them know that you see and hear them and their pain.
Mhm.
And so I thought you did a really good job of that. Just say
No.
thank you for sharing, and that must have been hard. But I think those are two great phrases to use with someone. So, is there anything else that you want to share with the audience?
Yes, of course. I think that the biggest thing that I can leave people with is when I started pursuing a relationship with God, and that God is Christ in my eyes, I think life got a lot better, not because things got easier, but because I knew I wasn't alone. So, at the end of the day, like, yes, obviously I'm always available to take new clients. I'll teach people about infinite banking, show them how to buy businesses. I mean, whatever they need, right? Like, I'm always available, always taking new clients. I'm here at their service. But there's a different type of peace that you can get once you realize that relationship with Christ has always been available. It's free. You don't have to do anything to earn it. It's just accepting it. That's what people get wrong most of the times, is they think that they have to be the perfect person to get into heaven or deserve the love of Christ, and that's not it at all. When Christ died on that cross for all of us, he died once for everything, past, present, and future. And all he's asking now is just a relationship, just loving relationship. That's it. The same way that someone would have with their father. I didn't have the best father. I'm sure you can relate as well too. So imagine if we could have a father that was all loving. That's a free parent right there. That's a free father that won't judge us, that wants to just love us, and is just pushing us to have a better life on earth just by giving us certain guidance. That's it. At the end of the day, no matter how much we mess up, I know I'm still going to heaven. I'm still going to heaven because I know God loves me. I know Christ loves me. And at the end of the day, I cannot earn my way into heaven. So that's the last thing I would say to the audience is follow a relationship with Christ, please. It's like one of the most beautiful things and most painful things people will go through.
Yep. And when you're in the midst of the pain, he's right there.
He's right there. Just people don't want to see it.
Well, thank you. That was a really powerful testimony. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you. Thank you. I appreciate the podcast today. I think this was great. I loved it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Wulf. And where can people go to connect further with you?
Instagram, Wulf Trigo. So it's WULFTRIGO. And I mean, that's it. Like, that's basically the easiest way to connect. I have my business page tagged on my bio there, on my website. I have all that stuff there. I respond to all my DMs. That's me. Yeah, that's my real that's my real account. So Wulf Trigo on Instagram, and it's verified as well too. So
perfect. So you're gonna get the real Wulf.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, because I had an incident in the past where people were making fake pages. Unfortunately, they scammed a buddy of mine because he thought it was me. So that's why I paid for the verification, because I was like, I'm not doing it for clout. I just want to make sure people know that this is the real me. That it's like the real page.
Sweet. Well, I know you're headed out to Dubai tomorrow.
Tomorrow night. Yeah.
Well, you're gonna be gone for a little bit. I'm gonna be training, so I'm gonna be ready for you when you come back to the mat.
Nice.
Be ready.
Yes.
Hey, we'll see.
Yeah, no, I gotta tell you, like, one of the toughest opponents I've had the pleasure of rolling with. You're very, very skilled, very fast.
Oh, thank you. I feel like I'm rolling with a tree trunk whenever I'm rolling with you. Not a fat joke. You're very strong.
I know. I don't take it like that.
Yeah. Okay.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Wulf, and please share the episode with anyone who came to mind, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.